So I'd like to introduce you to one of my friends now, and he's called Paul Ramos. Now Paul has recently risen to some level of fame because of his work in Australia. So I'm going to ask Paul to tell the story himself, and then we're going to think about how he's got to that point and what tools and techniques he's used to achieve that. Over to you, Paul.
Hello, my name is Dr. Paul Ramos. I'm a veterinarian, specifically trained as a wildlife veterinarian. Did a residency in zoo medicine, and Scott asked me today to talk to you about communication, I think, about science and communication and how to sort of reach people in today's world. A little background about me. Up until very recently, I didn't really know how to communicate because the opportunities really weren't there. But I guess really quickly, what happened is that in February, I went to Australia to help out with the bushfire response there in wildlife. And I brought along my camera and I told stories on TikTok. I posted a total of, I was there for 3 weeks. I posted a total of 45 times. 39 of those posts had an average of almost 45,000 views each. 3 of those in the 6 figures, and 3 of those went viral in the millions. And one of those even reached the nightly news in America, and some of the biggest social media and media outlets in the world, took hold of one of those images, and it really went gangbusters. And as a result, now in TikTok, I've gone from 12,000 to 150, now 180,000 followers in the matter of weeks to a couple months. That's what happened. Right, so that's kind of the background. That's my kind of view on this. We just need to stop being so self-conscious. Just be people interacting with people, and then we're going to get things done. But we need to think more like marketers when we're in the real world, and less like scientists. Because you're always a scientist, but we gotta stop acting so much like scientists. How do you do this? Well, I guess really quickly, it's about, you're gonna have to get out of your comfort zone and gain some new skills. This is the 21st century. You're going to have to get that phone out. You're going to have to get comfortable with a half a dozen main platforms now that the majority of the world is using. LinkedIn, Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, all those platforms really, really matter because that's where everybody is. If you're not on those platforms and you're a scientist, in essence, you kind of don't matter in a way. Your message is not going anywhere. It's just sitting with you, and it's going to die with you. So get on those platforms, spend hours, many, many hours just watching how the successful videos play out. Sit with TikTok for 5 hours. Believe me, it's easy. And scroll through what works. And don't be thinking that TikTok's just for young teenagers, because it was like that 5 minutes ago. But I'm telling you, in 6 months, even now, everybody's going to be on it. So it's also about timing. If you want to kind of have an impact, like get in there early. It's like early real estate. I would say get into TikTok now because it's the place to tell stories at the moment. The other ones, it's much more hard to gain traction and get an audience, and definitely not impossible, but it's really hard to get that organic growth, meaning growth without having to pay for advertising. So upload those platforms, play with them, understand them, become knowledgeable, experiment with them. Don't be self-conscious. If something doesn't work, who cares? At least you learned about it. Be present in the world. That's what this means. Get on those platforms, learn how to film, just use your phone. Don't worry about lighting, don't worry about sound. Everything there is on your phone. If you want to upscale and learn those skills, that's fantastic. That's really awesome. Then go for it. But don't let the lack of those things stop you, because that just slows you down. Just get your phone out and start today and practice and play and learn, and then you'll grow, and then you will actually reach people. You will. That's what I'll have to say is just start.
So social media, this is a hard one. Not everyone's comfortable with it. Not everyone enjoys using it. But as Paul said in his video, social media is where the public is at. So if you're serious about engaging with the public, you really need to think about social media. Now, in terms of which platforms to use, as Paul said, TikTok is the one that's growing at the fastest rate. But where ideas tend to sit, where debates tend to sit, is on Twitter. That might surprise you because it's famous for being all Kardashians and bums. It's not. There's a lot of debate on there. Most academics are on there, so I'm sure many of you are already on there. But engaging your audience on there is a really important step in building your reputation as a scientist. So think about it. Do you know who your audience is, first of all? And if you do, get onto TikTok, get onto Facebook, get onto Twitter, and start to communicate with them. Now, I know Paul has got a particular perception of the scientific mindset. Let's listen to this.
The thing is that we can talk about all the facts and the figures and the data and all that, until we run out of breath, and all that matters. But all we're doing is we're talking to and amongst ourselves. The world continues to revolve despite what we're doing. Life continues to play out. Like what we're doing as scientists is having no impact on the rest of the world if we're not sharing our worldview with others and changing their attitudes to have them come around to respecting, acknowledging nature and what we need to do to make this world a better place. So we need to get out of our silos, get out of our shells, and start interacting with people like people. I am just a person. I shared on my phone my personal experience with the rest of the world, and it went bonkers. And through that, I planted a seed where people started to care more about the fires in Australia. And maybe as a result, they'll think about what's happening around the world on the bigger scale. And it all starts with a teddy bear and a koala. Who would have thought? Science is not going to save the world. We as scientists, we know what the situation is. We know what we know, and we know what we don't know. We know the risks. We understand risk mitigation and all that important stuff. We use those facts and that information to make decisions on like an actionable policy level or a management level. But all that stuff that we know is not getting through to the public. And they're the ones who matter because they're the ones who are going to really enact true change. What scientists need to do, I think, is stop talking like scientists. No one cares about your are not value. No one cares about your no one cares about your statistical significance or your species that you used or, the caveats that you put in your conclusions. No one cares. What they do care about is how can I say this, Scott? You can edit this out. Because the problem nowadays, and probably has always been this way, is that when you're talking to somebody, especially if it's something about, if you're talking about facts and reasoning and logic and politics, you come up against a wall of ego. All of us have it, and now it's kind of like everybody's ego is on steroids, and you cannot get around that. So the moment you mention things like that, there's a roadblock and you're not going to get through. So stop talking to people as if they're another scientist. Start talking to people, I think, like people. If you want to get around that ego because there's just no other way to get through to somebody, you got to go around it. You have to appeal to their humanity. You've got to talk to them like a person.
So how do you feel about that? How's your ego? Does your ego get in the way? Now, I know we all have an ego. We've all got an ego. And if your ego is holding you back as a scientist, that is not a good thing. So listen to what Paul said. You have to drop it and you have to think about your audience. And I'll come back to that later.
For example, if you want to move the ball and maybe change someone's mind about their attitudes about climate change, rather than throw a bunch of facts and figures and graphs at them, show them images without even mentioning the word climate change, without even talking about facts, but show them images of how it's actually impacting real people's life, and which even better is if the people look like them. Then you're going to plant the seed within them, and they're going to start to question, themselves. Maybe I should listen to the science and scientists. Maybe I'm not wrong. And so, it's kind of like when someone pushes you, your natural reaction is just to push back. So we need to stop pushing people, even though that's even sort of in some ways the right thing to do. People just don't respond very well to that. So we need to step back and we need to show them in a very subtle and respectful way our point of view, essentially. So yes, science has a very real role in terms of making this world a better place. There's no doubt about that, but it's not going to save it. Because of how connected we are today, what will save the world is marketing. What I mean by that is how we see the world and what we know and what we believe to be true or important, the actions we need to take. We need to market that to the general public for them to change their behavior, because they're the ones who are going to impact the industry leaders and politicians. And that's how you get true big